Hey guys, welcome back to The Constant Show. I am a malfunctioning Mark Zuckerberg robot, and we're going to talk about Puppet Master. So I'm going to do a play-by-play of almost everything that happens, and then some jokes, and then we'll go into my general thoughts towards the movie. Timestamps in the comments below if you ain't here for all that. The movie starts with a flashback to a hotel. Inside the hotel is the first Puppet Master. He's an old guy that the movie tries to convince me is a sweet person, despite creating, in no particular order, a ghoulish skeleton in a trench coat with pointed objects for both limbs who has screws out of his eyes that come out when he wants to murder something. A drill-headed baby in a janitor costume. An emo Barbie that vomits leeches? A pin-headed man whose entire existence must be hell as he maneuvers the strength of an adult man with the depth perception of a housefly. I don't know how many puppets ago I lost you, but any of them is already too much for allegedly sweet old guy. Allegedly sweet old guy is finishing the paint job on Spinny Head. There's puppets and puppet parts like all over the wall, a lot of like half finished pieces. The doll is racing the German men in black to get back to the hotel room where allegedly sweet old guy is like packing the other dolls. And then a perspective shot from this doll, the one with the pointy hands. I feel like they just stuck a camera on a gerbil and then just let it run through a hotel. Most of the people in the hotel just completely ignore this little miniature murderer as he just like sprints around. The one person who does like she notices him, she's like, ah! And then the doll, he does the same thing back. I'd like to point out that there were a ton of dolls like splattered all over the wall. It looked like a series of saw traps had gone off in somebody's toy box. He somehow managed to like just stuff them all in this box in a very short amount of time. And I guess if you weren't finished by that point as a doll, you're just done. Good luck with the next Puppet Master because you're just ahead. The German men in black get to the door and then they pull out their, German pistols. The allegedly sweet old guy tucks his puppet chest into like the wall, and it doesn't look like it's big enough to house everything in this room. I'm just saying. Would you like to know what this has to do with the rest of the movie? He's the puppet master, and there's living puppets. The next set of scenes serves to introduce us to the heroes of our story. I use the word heroes incredibly loosely. There's Professor Uncharismatic, who has a dream about a woman that he can't save from this guy in a suit. And then he wakes up, and then there's blood dripping out of his shirt. And then he's like, ah, and it's leeches. And then he wakes up again. We got two dream sequences for the price of one. There's the White Witch. She's like a psychic at a carnival who does a colder reading than a refrigerator warning label in Alaska. Whenever she gets to the end of the fortune telling with this idiot couple, she starts like choking, having visions of like the hotel from earlier in the movie and her like crawling across the floor. The final duo of our little impromptu Justice League is Mixed Signals Man and Super Freak. And they're working in like a sleep study place. And he's got on this headset. He's asking the subject of the study to dream about her wildest fantasy. He's like, oh, do you feel this? Hold on, I'm turning it up. Super Freak's like, no, I don't. All four of them go to the hotel to look for the suit guy from Professor Uncharismatic's dream. We meet Lady Blah Blah and the other chick's like the housekeeper. It turns out that Lady Blah Blah is actually married to Suit Guy from the dream. They ask about Suit Guy, and then Lady Blah Blah is like, oh, you guys don't know he's dead. She says it very casually for somebody who just lost their husband. Could have sold that one a little harder. She takes them to the casket. She says that he killed himself, but it's an open casket, and there's no visible sign of injury. Suit Guy didn't want to be buried until the Avengers got here. Like, how long were you going to keep this dead guy here if they didn't show up? Professor Uncharismatic, Lady Blah Blah, and the nanny, they go up to their rooms, leaving White Witch, Mixed Signals Man, and then Super Freak to, like, be at the casket. There's this back and forth where they're like, oh yeah, Suit Guy, he actually sent out a signal, but he, like, blocked us from finding out that he was dead. White Witch pokes what looks like a crystal dipstick into the guy's chest to figure out whether or not he's actually dead. She comes to the conclusion that he's actually dead. It's crazy that psychic powers actually make you less effective than an EMT. Because An EMT wouldn't need the crystal dipstick. They would just go for a pulse. Professor Uncharismatic and Lady Blah Blah, they take the elevator up. We find out that Professor Uncharismatic's specialty is anthropology, which is ironic because he has no idea how to interact with a person. And again, that's coming from a Mark Zuckerberg. There's a ton of awkward silence in the elevator, and you know that polite smile that you would give to like an incel so that they don't stalk or murder you? It's where that scene ends. White Witch is in her room and she's wafting hickory and dragon's blood at the nanny. The movie never explains where she got dragon's blood, and I really want to know. White Witch has like a Norman Bates dog. It's dead and stuffed. She like takes it out of her purse. It's like a bowling bag that she just keeps her dead dog in. Professor Uncharismatic finds this picture of the ballroom and he rubs it. He starts having a vision, which you'll remember how his visions work is he's asleep and then he has 2 to 3 dream sequences and then he figures something out. It didn't even have the courtesy to do it twice correctly. He imagines pretty much the exact same scene as the first time, but this time Dead Suit Guy is wearing a mask. Super Freak and Mixed Signals Man are riding the elevator with the nanny. Super Freak starts having this vision of Dead Suit Guy attacking this woman. It's depicted like a Lifetime scene, but the performance that he gives is closer to Arnold Schwarzenegger as a pro wrestler. I'm sorry, I know it's a serious subject matter, but they did not convey that at all. It was like watching like a Bruce Lee Mortal Kombat finisher in slow motion. While this is happening, Mixed Signals Man is like pressing for details about it. He's like, who is it? What's going on? They go to their room and Mixed Signals Man has like this white glove. He's like dusting it for some reason. Super Freak, she's on the bed and she's reliving the past experiences of the bed, but he's just not interested at all. And he's like, you need to focus. Big signals man to the rescue. She ignores him, and then he's like, you need to focus on business. Big signals man to the rescue. Oh, it's so much fun. Dead suit guy lays in a casket, and the scene pans in on him. And you're like, what is he gonna do? Is he gonna like tilt his head up or wink his eye at you or something? Big body, tiny head comes out. You remember the puppet from earlier. That's the scene. Everybody goes to dinner. You got Lady Blah Blah, you got Nanny, you got Professor Uncharismatic, you got Super Freak, we have Mixed Signals Man, the White Witch is a who's who of our B-list X-Men. We start to learn Lady Blah Blah's story, and apparently her family owned the hotel. Dead Suit Guy had charmed his way into her heart, and then they had gotten married, and then he started renovating the hotel. And then after he started renovating the hotel, he just immediately stopped for some reason. So the entire time that she's talking, White Witch is just being snarky to her. Eventually, like Lady Blah Blah just has it. And she's like, if you have something to say, you could say it. And then White Witch is like, let's go. And then she unloads and she's like, your husband was a piece of crap. I hated that guy. We all hated that guy. We're just here looking for revenge. White Witch gives less F's than a teacher really trying to reach these kids. She dunks on the whole table, too. Professor Uncharismatic and Lady Blah Blah go outside. Lady Blah Blah has like a weird moment of realization that she's just brought like 4 complete strangers into her hotel. So she's kind of just like, who exactly are you people? Professor Uncharismatic explains that the Dead Suit Guy actually brought them together as psychics. Dead Suit Guy and Mixed Signals Man, who is on the team for some reason. I think he's pretty much just Super Freaks plus one. Dead Suit Guy and Mixed Signals Man work together to find the Egyptian secret for bringing inanimate figurines to life. White Witch is apparently a diviner who found the last alchemist who allowed Dead Suit Guy to find the puppet master. Then he kind of starts to explain their powers. Super Freak can learn the emotional history of any object, which we already learned. It gives us an example too, like we couldn't understand what she actually does. She can touch things and learn about them. What does it mean? And then she's like, what do you do? And Professor Uncharismatic's like, I dream. And she's like, well, I mean, everybody dreams. That's not a power at all. He's like, well, not all dreams come true. Whenever Nanny was in the White Witch's room, she had specifically told her to stay away from the fireplace. She was like, oh, you're in grave danger. Don't go near any fireplaces. Um, so Nanny goes to the fireplace. She's startled by piano noises, walks over, and there's nothing there. And it happens like twice. Big body, tiny head grabs the fireplace poker. Nanny goes to the fireplace. This third time she's been to the fireplace and realizes that the fireplace poker isn't there. And then she dies. Lady Blah Blah faints. At first, I thought it was supposed to be in relation to that murder that we just saw, but the scene kind of leans towards it's the dead suit guy who's sitting in a chair now. They ask who moved the body, which is a question that I have as well. They have no idea where the nanny is. Lady Blah Blah is still not trusting the four complete strangers that have come into her house and since then talk crap about the dead husband. She's like, why are you here again? To prevent a dream. That line would only be cool in Nightmare on Elm Street. Super Freak reenacts the history of the tub that she's in. Mixed Signals Man says that he'd use the power to take over the world, which we can see the power already, and it's just you get 5 puppets, which is like, Mixed Signals Man, Mixed Signals Man. Nothing. So she puts on her towel. You're thinking, oh crap, they're really gonna get her this time. She walks out the door. Mixed Signals Man jump scares her. To the rescue. They start to get busy, if you know what I'm saying. White Witch burns a note on the door with a candle. Professor Uncharismatic walks up to her, and then she smears like a bloody chicken paw onto his hand. And I think you've heard enough of this movie now that I could raise this criticism. I don't know what her power is supposed to be because we've already seen 3 different methods of psychicking. Mixed Signals Man ruins lovemaking by talking about it like it's an experiment into a tape recorder. Professor Uncharismatic finds a human-shaped candle on his door along with a note from the White Witch. Which, if he's got a burnt candle, what was the chicken paw about? He has a drink as his puppet just kind of like runs around the room. It's like a Tom and Jerry sketch. Whenever it goes to the puppet's perspective, and the music is so like it's wacky clown music. Do 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 do. White Witch burns incense in her room with her dog, which how many different rituals do we have to do to get whatever you're trying to do done? We got the dragon blood. Dragon blood isn't enough. Puppet runs the length of the hall. We're still in Tom and Jerry mode. Professor Uncharismatic tries to tune out the bed frame that's a knocking in the next room. Puppet is going to like room to room. He starts off by going to White Witch's room and seeing like what's going on. He slowly drags a chair into place so that he can get a view, which was mechanics I really didn't need in a horror movie about puppets. So he gets bored there because there's not really a lot going on, but he hears the bed frame knocking in the next room. So now we got another chair sequence. He's going door to door like a knife salesman at this point. Drill-headed baby janitor gets up there with him. The screws are coming out on Hook Hand, so we know some stuff's about to go down. Hook Hand and Drill Baby Janitor just push open the door, rendering that whole chair sequence a complete and entire waste of my time. Super Freak realizes the door is open, and she hears something. She stops what she's doing. When Super Freak peeks under the bed, she sees Drill Baby Janitor, and she just kind of stays there as he runs towards her, and he's not very fast. He's a very small doll. That's very small steps. She gets drilled. Not like that. Mixed Signals Man is still completely bound. He is a hero in need. Japanese leech doll shows up, and she starts like biting Mixed Signals Man's chest, but he doesn't realize it's a doll. He wrangles his bandana free, and he looks down at Japanese leech doll, and he starts getting killed by the leeches. White Witch is taking her used to be alive plush dog through the hallway on a walk as she runs into Professor Uncharismatic. She offers him the chance to smash, but he's not really down, so she just kind of goes into her room. She finds Dead Suit Guy, and she's like, I knew you were alive the whole time. She's got a southern accent. I didn't expose you guys to it yet, so it's maybe a little bit confusing for you. But just imagine that throughout the whole movie and a lot of attitude. She's my favorite character by far. She starts shaking maracas at Dead Suit Guy. Just even on the caption, it's got Morale is shaking, right? And then smoke just starts to come out of her mouth. Ritual number 7. And then she remote closes his eyes like a garage door. So she's like, the dead can stay dead. Big body, tiny head throws White Witch onto the bed and he snaps her ankle. We see like the twist and then there's a crunch sound. That's what's supposed to happen there. He starts choking her out and then we're like, oh, okay, I get it. Because the earlier flashback had nothing to do with this. She overpowers him and chucks him like a good boy doll. The back of her leg is like bleeding as she starts crawling out of the room. But there's no reason it would be because he snapped her ankle. He didn't stab her in the leg. Big Body Tiny Head wakes up, which suggests that these dolls can be incapacitated. White Witch is crawling through the hall, and then Big Body Tiny Head is like walking behind her. You know, the animation on it's not super great, and he's doing this like whole like Rocky thing, and I don't know what I'm supposed to feel here. He hits her with that two-piece, just poof poof. That was some of the better effects in the movie. Big Body Tiny Head is a more convincing fighter than Professor Uncharismatic. I'm just throwing this out there. She chucks him down like 4 to 5 flights of stairs. Big Body Tiny Head is waiting for her at the bottom when the door opens and gives her more of that Tyson treatment, but she throws him for a third time. Hook Hand jumps down, and then he finishes off the most interesting part of this movie. Salute to the White Witch for being a great horror movie protagonist. Lady Blah Blah wakes up Professor Uncharismatic, and she's like, I finally realized that there was some kind of connection between my husband and the puppet master. Seems pretty late. She takes him upstairs and they go to a ballroom where Dead Suit Guy is there and he's got his like, purge mask on. We've already seen this like 3 times by now. Professor Uncharismatic wakes up and the Avengers decapitated heads are in his bed and they're like talking to him. He wakes up again. You didn't have to make it all a dream sequence. Lady Blah Blah wakes up Professor Uncharismatic again. And the exact same scene as before plays, where she's taking him upstairs and like, I didn't realize the connection, blah, blah, blah. You've heard me say it just like 5 minutes ago. But Professor Uncharismatic just kind of goes with it, despite the fact that he knows he's a dream psychic, so if he saw it in his dream, it's probably going to happen. He tries to Groundhog Day her, and he finishes like one of her sentences, and she's like, how did you know that? He's like, well, I'm kind of a magician, which, no, you're actually not. You're a psychic. That's totally different. You have real powers. That would be a downgrade. Lady Blah Blah reads allegedly sweet old guy's journal. It says that the puppets mirror the soul of their master, and he worries about like them falling into the wrong hands, which, based on the murder powers you gave them, I'm not surprised. Professor Uncharismatic has to have another vision just to realize that he should probably get out of here. He's had 4 visions now of bad stuff happening in this hotel, and this is the first time that he's like, maybe I should get out of here. It makes sense that he can't save her because he's not smart enough to figure out that he should just leave. They go downstairs, and the movie drops any pretense of him having to dream to have his power. He just stands there and he's like, oh, they're in the dining room. You really didn't even need to do that. Because later on in the movie, all the doors are locked. You could have just had them walk into the dining room. This guy's just sitting in traffic like, oh, I should take the left. When they go into the dining room, all the dead people are there. They're just like sitting at the table except for like the nanny. And Dead Suit Guy is now a live suit guy. Plot twist. He gets all smug and he's like, she doesn't understand the metaphysics of it, Professor Uncharismatic. Why don't you explain it to her? As someone who is interested in philosophy, I was like, I wonder if they know what metaphysics means. I didn't have to wait long. The next line of the movie is, I metaphysically killed myself. A live suit guy wants immortality. He tells Professor Uncharismatic that he's now like stronger and he's better as a zombie. Professor Uncharismatic is like, you're almost indestructible. A live suit guy is just like, you? What are you gonna do? A live suit guy just really, he chews the scenery. He goes on this long James Bond villain speech about how like he puppeteered the parents. Like halfway through it, you're like, okay, we get it. You're super evil. Lady Blah Blah gets angry and she goes up to him to give him that one piece treatment. He slaps her hard enough that the shockwave actually turns Spinny Head's head, and he has a new expression when he comes back around. And then he just kind of backhands Professor Uncharismatic, just not a threat at all. He does some ground and pound where he's just punching Professor Uncharismatic before taunting Spinnyhead. This is my favorite part of the movie. Whenever he taunts Spinnyhead, Spinnyhead turns around and he's got that, like, who is he talking to? Like, Alive Suit Guy is just still beating up on Professor Uncharismatic. And then Lady Blah Blah comes over and she knocks him out with a vase. He's supposed to be stronger, but he still got knocked out by a vase. Lady Blah Blah starts dragging Professor Uncharismatic around from like closed door to closed door. Live Suit Guy catches up to him and then just immediately punches Professor Uncharismatic again. Professor Uncharismatic does land a groin shot. Professor Uncharismatic kicks him into an elevator. A live suit guy just starts bullying Big Body Tiny Head, and he gets drilled in the leg. He's like, "Why? It's because you took their friend's head off and threw it." He gets jumped by the puppets, and they start just going to town. he he goes to climb out of the elevator, and Hook Hand is waiting there for him, and he cuts like the green out of his fingers because he's a zombie. Professor Uncharismatic actually tries to save him at the end for some reason. He's like, "No!" But he's just killed all of your friends, and he's a zombie who's going to murder you and then bring you back as a flesh puppet. This movie is like if Hellraiser started a block of tofu, and the special effects budget was discontinued toys from your grandma's attic. This movie is like if Stepping on Legos was rated R. This movie is like an actual puppet show because I regret watching it for as long as I did. This movie is like what Jeff Dunham would see if he was dying of mushroom poisoning. This movie is like deja vu, but you were already bored the first time. This movie is like making a fully functional Gundam. Hear me out. Using it to blow up the moon, getting crushed by one of the asteroids, and then landing on a series of orphanages. I like where we started, but we made some mistakes along the way. And now we can all recognize this for the short-sighted tragedy it was. I think you can have fun with your viewing experience, but there are some serious problems that it has. It doesn't go far enough into camp or serious for you to like respect it as a thing. Characters suck. One character sucks, and it's the main character, which makes it worse because he's really bland throughout the whole thing, and he doesn't actually have any kind of journey or progress, and it feels undeserved when he's the person that's left. Because we had the chick who was 8 different kinds of a witch, and she's gone. The super freak chick who, she wasn't the most powerful, but she was interesting. And then we get stuck with this guy. The movie doesn't understand what words mean. The puppets in the movie aren't actually puppets by any definition of that word. They're not literal puppets, right? Because they don't have the strings, and some of them aren't even made of like the same wood as the other ones. The Japanese doll that does the like leech mouth thing, she's clearly made of rubber. The puppets actually turn against the puppet master, which leaves me very confused as to how this puppet master thing works in the first place. Because up until now, I thought he was just like, and like they're going around murdering people. But now I realize that the puppets have like a will of their own. The witch isn't a witch. Oh, well, I guess the witch isn't actually a psychic. I don't know why they call her one when she's clearly got a bevy of powers at her disposal. A Mary Poppins bag of voodoo. It's extremely repetitive in certain parts. One of them is the dream sequence that we keep getting, and there's not enough difference between them for it to even matter. Even in individual scenes, right? The scene with the White Witch and Big Body Tiny Head, she throws him 3 times. It's the same move, and it's not done for a like dramatic buildup or anything. It's like, I guess that's like her go-to move. It's the equivalent of you just pressing one button repeatedly when you play a fighting game. There's no real theme, moral, or takeaway, and I was trying to think about like why this was, and I realized that it's entirely because like a story is constructed almost entirely through the viewpoint character, which is why so many like different series use like the boring bland, like I'm super generic and I like good, fun, happiness, and friendship. all those things that everybody loves. There's not really a struggle between any of the characters and like what's going on. The main struggle is just between this villain who's already won and then these puppets. Like the final sequence of this movie, the main character is just like outside not doing anything as these puppets are just handling the plot. The movie isn't consistent with its rules in any way. I don't mind it with the white witch chick because she's just like she's cool enough to get away with it. Between the accent and just like the blatant disregard for everything, I'm willing to buy whatever power you want to give her. But the main character, right? His dream sequences, he gets them outside of his dream thing, and back to him being a poorly designed character. You gave him a power that he can only use when he's asleep. And then you realize like halfway through that like this isn't going to be interesting if he has to take a power nap every time something happens. Oh no, what's going on? Hold on, let me sleep it over. The premise is infinitely better than the execution of it, which I find baffling because like if I write this down on paper, it seems like a brilliant idea. You've got a team full of psychics versus some kind of like immortal zombie puppet master. That could have been really interesting, and I don't even know how it didn't. There's so much going on there. Our dragon's blood. That's been the movie. These were my thoughts. Those were some jokes. I'm Constant, and I hope you enjoyed yourself. Like, comment, subscribe. Oh, also, my friend TT has a poetry channel, and I'm putting that in the description.
Now you got to use it.
Thank you.